The first step you have to take to improve your relationship with money is admit that you might quite possibly have a problem. A lot of people are in denial about their actions and what they do. And transparency is not something that is, how would I say this, more common, I would say. Millennials and Gen Z are a bit more transparent than maybe Gen X or not Gen X, is it Gen X? No, Gen one of those. Yeah, it would be Gen X. And the baby boomers. Like they weren't transparent about the things that they were doing in general, but definitely not with money. So those generations are more so like with, for example, counseling. Counseling is just now becoming a popular, normalized thing that people are being more open to sharing their lives, sharing their stories, because I remember, my mom would say to even to me, like she's a boomer, and she would say like, "Hey, you don't need to repeat this to anyone." I mean, I know like my husband's mom was like that and their moms were like that. Everything was always what goes on here stays here. And it was like this big secret. And if you go and you tell a secret, you are going to get your behind beat. I'm just being completely honest. And what I have learned from those specific things is that it cripples us not to be truthful, transparent, and honest. And that's where you have a lot of those generational traumas because we're not allowed to speak our truth. That's why we struggle with setting boundaries. That's why addictions begin to happen. That's why we don't have standards and we settle for things because we're not allowed to be honest. And if you cannot be honest with yourself about money and how it gets to work for you, then you can forget it. You can go ahead, stop listening to this episode because honesty is required. And if you can't get real with yourself, you are not meant to have wealth, period. So the more transparency that you have and being willing to say, you know what, this is my issue, it will raise awareness and it will allow you to see things. Now, I want to be clear. You can't just look at it and know you have a problem because some people walk around, know they have problems all the time and don't do nothing about it. We'll get to that. But first off, in order to think about what problems you might have, you're going to have to examine some things. One thing I want you to do is get out a journal and really take the time to think about your patterns with money. Everyone has a certain pattern with money. I know, for example, I am more so frugal. I love a beautiful luxury lifestyle, but only in certain areas. So, where I'm frugal is I'm frugal when it comes to things that I don't deem or value as much. That might be certain clothes. It could be certain accessories, or it could be how um let's see, if I can find a discount on something. Like those are things I'm more frugal on. But then there are other things, no, I'm gonna have the luxury opportunity. If that is my massages, my supplements, my hair care, like those are the things, and even my food, like I'm not gonna settle. I eat a very expensive diet, and I would say my lifestyle is expensive, but those are the things that are important to me. And what you have to look at is where in your life are you typically more frugal versus where in your life are you like, hey, like this is a requirement. Now, I have been on the other side of that where sometimes, I'm like, I don't really want to spend as much. I want to purge a little bit. And I would encourage you to do that, especially if you're kind of spending and it doesn't really feel good to you. You might want to purge and say, do I really need this? Do I really want this? Is this benefiting or helping me? So I noticed, and let's just talk about the small day to day things. Of course, you need electricity. Of course, you're going to need to have your water, a place to live, things like that. But all those extra added enhancements are not required for you. Do you even use the things that you are paying for? For me, if I'm not using it, I'm not paying for it. Now, my husband, on the other hand, he's the type of person, he had a gym membership for like 2 years that he didn't use as often. And I'm like, what? You're giving those people $300 a year and you're barely going. That's me because if I'm going to pay for something, I'm going to use it. And it's okay if it's luxury. It's okay if it's high cost or even if it's cheap. I still want to be using it, period, because I don't believe in being wasteful. Sometimes I can be a little wasteful, though, on the other hand, with my food. And this is why I typically eat lots of fruits and vegetables. They may go bad before I get to them. So that's just the difference, and I don't try to do it on purpose, but that is something I'm being more mindful of. And I try to like look at products and cook things faster. So that's just me also being resourceful. And that's another pattern that you might have. Are you a resourceful person? Do you repurpose things and reuse them? I try to do that all the time with whether it's like my clothes, my handbags. I even do that with like my son, in his things. I also do a lot of giving. Like my husband and I, we give thousands of dollars away in clothing and shoes almost every year. My husband at first was like a little bit more of a hoarder, but I'm very proud to share that my resourcefulness has rubbed off on him. So that's something that I love that we're able to really do. And even if we're not going to use those items, we make sure to give them away to others. You want to have your look at and see like, do I clean things and get rid of what I don't need? Right? Because a lot of people hold on to so many things, and it's like, how in the crap are you able to enjoy those new things? How can you bring in the new when you have so many old things you're holding on to? Don't get me wrong, it's nothing wrong with memories or just beautiful experiences and events and things that you want to remember, but everything doesn't need to stay with you. Some things you need to let go of. So, a couple of questions that I might also add to this is, do you overspend or underspend based on your emotions? Sometimes I've noticed some people are emotional, and so when they're upset, they'll go, oh, let me go have a shopping trip. This is going to heal my energy. And while I 100% understand that retail therapy can be helpful, I think it's a little bit better to refrain from retail therapy, if at all possible, because it's spending and it's not necessary, versus choosing a more healthier way to cope with your emotions, as I've mentioned, regulating your nervous system through EFT tapping. You want to do some somatic shaking, that is an option as well. What about looking into your opportunities to go to therapy, go to counseling, looking at more healthier ways like journaling? I even do, I remember when I used to really rely on my gym workouts to help me with my emotions and things that I was going through. So, those are some different ways that you can relieve that, because if you're always spending, or even if For some people, and I'm being honest, it could be gambling when, you know, they are in not in the best headspace. You have to really consider like, why am I doing this over and over and over? And if it's like this addiction, what can you do to better yourself? These are things that a lot of people don't take into consideration and they think it's completely normal, but it is not. And with that, you might even want to consider, where do you get your spending habits from? So I know like my mom and my grandfather were like super frugal. My dad was frugal to a certain extent, but like he liked a little luxury. He was a Taurus. My husband's a Taurus. So like I'm kind of used to that tinge of luxury, but not like a complete everyday, all the time. I have to have this lux, 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 because sometimes it can become a bit much for me. Not everyone. Everyone is different. You have to think about what you might have picked up as a child with spending. Did your parents fight over money? Was that like a source of tension in your family? Did your parents say things like, you know, we can't afford this, this is beyond our budget? For me, I will be clear. My mom never used those words with, like, I can't afford this, even though when you look at her finances, you truly could not afford this. She would always get it done. And I think that's something that I learned for myself as well. Like when I want something, I don't care what the odds say. I'm kind of a bit, not kind of, I am delusional to think that I can have things that I should not have. And that is also what has really helped me to be what I consider the money goddess. I'm a money mogul. That's just me. And I love that about myself. And I try to share that even more with you all in my community, is that anything is possible. That doesn't mean that you don't have to take practical steps and do things and move yourself forward. But you really have to consider, like, if there is something out there and you desire it, saying, I can't afford this, or, you know, this isn't something that I need. Some people push it away and, like, oh, that's just crazy. Why would somebody do that? No, a lot of people that do that, they really want it, but they don't have enough belief that it can be theirs. And so you really want to put yourself in the situation where you can have positive spending habits, where you're able to balance out how you spend, and also not just be in like feast or famine mode, that you're kind of like at a leveled out. Feast is when you're constantly buying, buying, buying. Famine is when you're like, nope, not doing anything. I'm depriving myself of all the things that I really want. But then you go like, you're so in a famish, you go out and re-spend over and over and over. That's why for me, a Dave Ramsey method would never work. Dave Ramsey's method is, you have to have $1,000 in saving. In my opinion, what is that gonna do? I don't know, because $1,000 these days doesn't really do much, but that's neither here nor there. What I also recognized is, he says, okay, you need to pay off all of your debt before you like do anything. That's silly. You literally could go away at any moment. We don't know when we're leaving this earth. And you mean to tell me I'm going to put all of my energy into debt and I'm not going to save more than $1,000? Insane. My children might need that money. Debts, when you pass away, now some debts have to be paid off, but other debts, when you pass away, there's nothing that can be done. That's just me. That's my thinking, okay? However, I think that it is very important for you to pay your debts. Absolutely. But I also think it's important for you to save. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later in the episode. But these are things you really have to think about. Like, how do you still get to enjoy your life when you're always so focused on debt? People who focus on debt usually always have debt, because that is where their minds are going. They're not thinking about, how to live in a balance. And debt is not a bad thing. Debt is a choice to pay something off over time. Seriously. I literally, you guys, it's probably really funny, but like I like Klarna payment sometimes. And sometimes I like to pay thousands of dollars in full because that's just what I want to do. I do that when I buy something for like $100 and I'm like, oh, I'll just do Klarna just for fun. That's just me. I don't really like when I see Klarna payments, that doesn't make me think someone's broke or they can't afford this. Maybe they just want to do that. Now, some people do have different financial situations, and that's fine. But I also don't mind paying thousands of dollars in full for something. I do it all the time. It's just whatever you feel the most comfortable with, whatever feels good to you. But guess what? I don't really have a lot of debt. And maybe, the Dave Ramsey method is talking more so along the lines of like personal debt and people, spending just frivolously for no reason. And that's why maybe I don't relate, but I see debt as a good thing to invest in leverage. So that's why Robert Kiyosaki is someone that I admire more in the that mindset because he, for example, talks about like why would you give your money away to build up like an apartment complex when you can leverage that with debt, right? That is the mindset that I have. It is a little different, it's a little bit more advanced. However, you need to see your debt as something that you want to, of course, pay off, but you're not going to deprive yourself to where you're going to get into more debt because you're in that feast and famine mode. In this step where you're admitting you have a problem and you're reflecting, I do want you to be gracious with yourself. Like, don't blame yourself, don't blame others. I want you just to really be a gentle observer of your money and your spending. And I believe that was from Gabby Bernstein as well as Amanda Francis. They talk about that a lot of just observing certain situations, not attaching emotions to it, not making it mean anything about you. Because I think that's what a lot of us do, and why we don't want to talk or be honest about our finances because we make it think that it makes us like a bad person or makes us irresponsible. But you get to choose what things mean to you. You get to choose what words mean to you, how people react to you, situations that happen. You get to choose and make meaning of it. It doesn't have to mean anything, or it can mean everything. It's all up to you.